Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Vered Kogan, and I am delighted to introduce you to Sam Horn. Sam is the founder and CEO of the Intrigue Agency and the Kung Fu Training Institute. As a communication strategist, she helps people design and deliver one-of-a-kind presentations, pitches, books, businesses, and brands that scale their impact for good. She is an in-demand keynoter and trainer for organizations like Intel, Oracle, and Accenture. Her 3 incredible TEDx talks and numerous books, including Kung Fu, Pop, Got Your Attention, and Someday is Not a Day in the Week, have been featured in the New York Times, Fast Company, and Forbes. Her latest book is Talking on Eggshells, Soft Skills for Hard Conversations, and it is absolutely incredible. And I highly, highly recommend it to anyone listening to this today. I got to meet Sam when she was a guest speaker at an event. It's part of a group that I belong to called the Genius Network with Joe Polish. And Sam, you are an incredible speaker, an incredible human. I'm so grateful that we got to have dinner together and you got to, you shared with me some things that have been really impactful in my life. And for that, I'm forever grateful and so thrilled that everyone gets to hear from you today. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really looking forward to sharing some stories and insights with your viewers and listeners.
Well, how about we start with a story of what inspired you to, write about this topic and to create this mindset shift in our world, which we're going to talk more about in our conversation today.
You know, I had the privilege of writing Kung Fu more than 20 years ago. And in the last few years, in our increasingly divisive world, I realized, you know what, I didn't even write about social media in that book. There was no Zoom calls or Skype or whatever. And I thought that book needs to be updated. And furthermore, I had grown up in a Cold War, not that kind of Cold War. It's my dad was very emotionally distant and my mom was emotionally wounded. And I remember the silence at our dinner table and the silence in our drives. And they were good people. They taught my brother and sister and I to do the right thing. It's just that they did not know how to talk about hard conversations. And so they didn't. And that set up a ripple effect. And then I was in a relationship, very dysfunctional, toxic relationship. And I thought, we need current techniques for our cancel culture. We need to know what to say when we don't know what to say in the challenging situations we face every day. And that's why I wrote Talking on Eggshells.
A lot of people are struggling with that. Like they want to connect. I think a lot of people feel deeply lonely these days, and they deeply want to connect to have more intimate, conversations, real, authentic connections with people. But they're so worried to, hurt people or to say the wrong thing. So what do you recommend for people that are in that place that they are talking on eggshells? By the way, that's an amazing title because that's how it feels, right? It's like there's that reluctance. They censor themselves. What can be helpful to them?
You know, isn't it ironic? I mean, we're taught math and science and history in school. We're not taught what to say when someone accuses us of something that's not true, when we have a polar opposite political opinion with a family member, when someone blames us for something that's not our fault. So the good news is it's not too late to learn. In fact, Vered, if you would like, and unless people are driving, I hope they get paper and pen. You know me, we're going to put a vertical line down the center. And on the left are words to lose, and on the right are words to use. And on the left is conflict, and on the right is cooperation, and on the left is confusion, and on the right is clarity. So in our world today, when we don't know what to say, we're going to actually teach words to use instead of words to lose so that we can turn confusion into clarity and conflict into cooperation.
I think that would be amazing. And I appreciate the exercise. I've done it and I've had a chance to, with your permission, to share it with a group, and it was really well received. So yes, absolutely.
Good. So shall we start off what to do if someone makes a mistake, right? I mean, it's so easy to say you should have called if you were going to be late, or you should have been more careful, or you should have talked with Joe to get, approval before you ran with that, etc. So over on the left, put the word should. And over on the right, well, let me tell you a story about what to put over on the right. Sound good? I'm visiting my son Andrew in Brooklyn, and his 1-year-old son Hero crawls across the floor and he hauls himself up on a guitar over in the corner. He starts banging on the strings. Now, Andrew could have said, you should stop doing that. It's like he could have said no. He could have yanked the guitar away, all which would have made Hero feel worse. Instead, he said one word. Do you know what it was?
I do, but I'd rather you say it.
He said, gentle.
Yeah.
And Vera, do you remember, I saw Hero's face transform in front of me. And he reached back to the guitar. He went strum, strum, strum. And in that moment, Hero made music. And it was because instead of shaming his behavior, Andrew shaped his behavior. Instead of criticizing him for doing it wrong, he coached him on how to do it right. And instead of making him feel bad, he made him feel better. And then Hero learned from that situation instead of losing face over that situation.
And in a society where many of us grew up feeling ashamed for things, and that's kind of baggage that many of us carry. When somebody says something that's judgmental, we go there and it brings up all that stuff all over again and can completely inhibit us from, thinking clearly and responding appropriately. And so how do we do that?
Well, number one is that, in fact, after at the end of our call, if you would like, we'll send people a words to lose, words to use reminder card that they could keep on their refrigerator. They can post at work by their laptop. Because in order to change habits, these ideas and intentions can't be out of sight, out of mind. We want them in sight, in mind, so we can catch and correct. So see, if you have right on your refrigerator over on the left that word should, it's like you should have fed the dog when you got home. Well, you should have picked up the dry cleaning on the way home. You should have put gas in the car. Oops, we catch from now on, please feed the dog as soon as you get home. Tomorrow, could you please put gas in the car so we've got some on the drive this weekend? Now we're being a coach instead of a critic. And once again, we are shaping people's behavior instead of shaming it. So that's just one example where we can use words that help instead of hurt.
And I think that that's a great tip for us speaking with ourselves as well, because many of us think, I should have said this, I should have done that, and we carry that. And so, if instead, we say, next time, right, we have that focus and coach ourselves. It's
That's
just so
exactly
much more compassionate and giving ourselves some grace because we're human.
Now, Vera, you just brought up the word compassion. So let's talk about compassion, okay? So let's think of a time that we're frustrated with someone, a time we're impatient, and in the middle, put the word contempt. Because often when we're upset with someone, frustrated with someone, we're only seeing it from our point of view. And as John Gottman found, the number one precursor to divorce is contempt. So how can we switch contempt to compassion? Want to hear one of my favorite examples on how to do that?
Please.
My Aunt Kay is 84 years old, and yet she volunteers at a hospital 5 days a week. And now she did this even during COVID when I was writing, talking on eggshells, and I interviewed her and I said, please think of a stressful situation where you were really feeling frustrated. And she didn't even have to think about it. She said that a woman had run into the ER holding her phone up saying, I just got a text from my daughter. She's in the ER. She's been in an accident. I need to get in and see her. Well, Kate called the ER. Someone was already with her daughter. Now, you may remember the rules during COVID. It's only one visitor per patient or no visitors. And Kay had to deliver that bad news. And the woman started screaming at Kay, I can't believe this. How can you do this? Now, Kay could have just enforced the policy. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. It's not my fault. Why are you blaming me? I didn't make the rules. See, all of those things in the contempt column where we are angry at someone for taking their frustration out on us, it doesn't help. Instead, Kay asked herself 4 words. How would I feel? How would I feel if that were my daughter in the ER and someone had told me I couldn't get in to see her? And Vered, it switched her from there's nothing I can do to let me see if there's something I can do. And she called the ER and she said, who is with the daughter? It was the Uber driver who had brought the young woman in. Kay was able to explain the situation to him, thank him. He left, and the mom was able to get with her daughter. So if we are feeling frustrated, impatient, no, ask ourselves, how would I feel? It moves us from impatience to empathy, from contempt to compassion, from there's nothing I can do to let me see if there's something I can do.
Oh, what a beautiful story. And it is a choice that we have, to kind of pause and ask ourselves those 4 words, right? Like, how would I feel? And there is something very powerful about kind of shifting the perspective. And when we connect with our heart, typically we can come up with new solutions that we hadn't even thought of before. Not necessarily, it's not that she hadn't thought of it before because she's, a bad person or anything like that. It just wasn't in her consciousness, probably. It wasn't an option. Yeah.
And here what you're saying is that once we have clarity, that there is often a better way to communicate in the heat of the moment. There are ways to keep our cool. Here's another way to turn contempt into compassion, or even impatience into empathy. Is I had shared that in a session, and a woman said, I can't wait to get home tonight. And I said, why? She said, I was fixing dinner last night. My daughter came home from school. She came in the kitchen, grabbed me around the waist, twirled me around, said, I got it. I got it. And she said, what? She said, I got the lead in my high school play. She said, Mom, get out your calendar. I want you there on opening night. And this woman said, with a feeling of dread, she looked at her calendar and she said, honey, I can't be there. I'm at a conference out of town. I'm leaving Thursday. I'm not even coming back until Monday. And her daughter said, Mom, you travel all the time. You miss so many of my events. Can't you make an exception this once? And the woman said she just stayed on that left-hand column. You should have told me earlier to save that date. It's like, there's nothing I can do. There's no way I can be there. And she said, what could I have said? I said, over on the right, put the words, I wish. I wish I could be there in the front row because I am so proud of you and I would love to be able to see you. There's something we can do. Can I ask a friend to videotape you so that when I get home on Monday night, we can sit on the couch together and you can debrief it? In today's world, sometimes we have to give bad news. And if we say, not my fault, nothing I can do, not the policy, they will feel we do not care. And that's when they get louder and in our face. If we say, I wish there were more I can do, at least they know that we care and we're doing our best so they don't kill the messenger.
That's right. And I imagine that choice to shift into compassion and curiosity about options is also dependent on the state that we're in. Because if we are completely overwhelmed, stressed out, sometimes it can be challenging in the moment to access that because we're kind of hijacked ourselves. We're not thinking clearly. So
Right.
what do you recommend for us to do in those times where there is a very hard conversation and it's almost like we know what we should do? Like maybe we're even looking at the list of the words to lose and words to use, but we can't quite get ourselves there in the moment. What can we do to kind of shift and reset to settle ourselves?
We can put on the left-hand column, find fault. We can put in the right-hand column, find solutions. So imagine you're in the middle of the meeting, something has gone wrong, and the blaming has begun. Well, you were the one who dropped the ball. Don't blame me. I never got that message. Well, I know. I said back and forth, right? We go down when there's blaming, finger pointing, fault finding. We go down that spiral of resentment and resistance, and we make it worse. If instead we use a pattern interrupt, and as you know, a lot of what the Talking on Eggshells book is like Elvis said, when things go wrong, don't go with them. So it's like, instead of just yelling, no, pattern interrupt. We actually hold our hand up like a policeman would. And that will cause people to pause instead of trying to talk over them and the voice of reason getting drowned out in the commotion. We hold up our hand and then we say, let's not do this. Or we say, this won't help. Blaming each other isn't going to undo this. Instead, let's focus on how we can keep this from happening again. John F. Kennedy said, our task is not to fix the blame for the past. It's to fix the course for the future. So like you said, Vered, if we're in the middle of that, people are getting into it and it's tense and stressful, just remember and say, time out. We're here to find solutions, not fault. Instead of finger pointing, let's figure out how we can contact that person, apologize for what happened, ensure them it's not going to happen again. That is proactive instead of reactive.
And what if the person on the receiving end of our invitation is completely overwhelmed or angry, frustrated, they're blowing up, what do we do in that case if they're not even willing to listen to our more compassionate words?
I love that you asked that. It's because now, if this is a stranger or a customer, we really don't know them, or somebody is yelling at us in public, we actually get out a piece of paper and we say, how do you spell your name, please? I did that with a taxi driver one time. It's like, you've probably flown into LAX, and the hotel shuttles to the hotels on Century Boulevard, had quit at midnight. And so I needed to get a taxi for a 5-minute ride. Now, I knew they'd probably been in line for several hours, and I believe in big tips for short rides. However, not when the driver is screaming at me. So I got my ever-present notebook and a pen, and I leaned forward and I looked at his license and I said, excuse me, how do you spell your name, please? Barrett, he went, He stopped mid-invective, mid-swear word, because he did not want a record of his remarks and he didn't want to be reported. So if we start writing down what people are saying or ask how they spell their name, often it is incentive for them to quit because they do not want it reported and they do not want it on their record.
Wow. That's an awesome tip. And what if it is a loved one?
If it's a loved one, it's there was a woman in a workshop and she had a very tumultuous divorce with her ex-husband, and she needed to stay in touch with him because they had custody of the kids and they needed to figure out drop-off times and so forth. And she had her lawyer send him a registered letter that said, from now on, and our conversations will be recorded. And at the first slur or swear word or accusation, I will terminate the call. And you are welcome to call back when you are ready to speak to me with respect. And then you document it so that if someone is swearing at you, you interrupt and you use their name. Ron, Sarah, remember our agreement? You don't say, don't swear at me, because I tell you, it's ironic, Vered, in the worst way, that if someone makes a negative accusation and we repeat the negative word, we actually end up reinforcing what they're saying. If someone says, you women are so emotional, and we say, we're not emotional, now we are, right? Someone says, now don't get mad at me. I am not mad at you. So would you like to know what to do if someone makes a negative accusation?
Please.
Okay. In the middle, don't deny it. Because if someone says, you don't care about your customers, and we say, we do too care about our customers, we're arguing with our customers about whether we care about our customers. So over on the right, write down these 4 words. What do you mean? What do you mean? Well, I've left 3 messages and no one's called back. The real issue. Do you see how if we refute a negative accusation, we reinforce it, we argue their point? If instead we say, what do you mean? We often get to the real issue. You don't love me anymore. I do too love you. How many times do I have to tell you, what do you mean? Well, you forgot our anniversary. Real issue. You never listened to me. I do too. No, what do you mean? Well, you've had your head in the phone last half hour. You haven't even looked up. Do you see how negative accusation? Don't refute it. What do you mean? Now, you want to know one more thing we can do in case someone makes a negative accusation?
Yes.
I'm speaking at a leadership conference, and in the Q&A, a woman put her hand up and she said, Sam, why are women so catty to each other? Well, once again, I did not want to reinforce that negative stereotype. So the bridge words are, do you know what I found? Women are real champions of each other. I wouldn't have this speaking engagement if someone hadn't recommended me. So it is another way, instead of denying, redirecting with the words, do you know what I have found? And once again, don't repeat what they said or you'll reinforce it.
Wow. This is all these tips are incredible. And I think it's great that people are writing them down because, it is a matter of seeing them and reminding ourselves of utilizing them. And a lot of these tips, they really hover on, again, a more compassionate approach and a more clear approach. Like if I say to someone, what do you mean? I'm curious. I'm asking a question. I want more clarity so I understand the real issue. So I'm not talking about, we're not continuing and cycling down something that is not the real issue, as you said. And that brings us to that kind of clarity mindset that I know you really have an expertise in. And so would you be willing to share with us what is that clarity mindset and why is it important?
See, we both agree that clarity is a lead domino. If we have clarity that there's a better way, and we have clarity on what we can say, then in the heat of the moment, we often have a way to keep our cool. And it gives us a way in the moment to know what to say instead of being confused. So here's a quick example, is that over on the left, put assumption, and over on the right, put ask. And over on the left, put conflict. And over on the right, put clarifying conversation. Because Harvard reported that 67% of us are self-identifying as conflict averse. That means when a conflict happens, we head the other direction. And we're kind of assuming that we don't want to make it worse, that we don't want to jeopardize our job, that we don't want to rock the boat. So if we have a negative perception around conflict, often we ignore it, we avoid it, right? So here's one of my favorite examples about how instead of assuming we're just going to make things worse or assuming that we're going to jeopardize our job if we address this conflict, here is a whole way to turn it around. It's my friend has her granddaughter who has learning disabilities, and it was very difficult for her to find a job in her 20s. She finally found a job at like a Salvation Army. And she really applied herself, and her boss told her that she was up for promotion. Well, she was so proud that she had finally accomplished something that she could point to, that's like, I'm valued. And the very next day, her boss told her that she was in danger of getting fired. Now, Vered, if this had happened before, she would have gone down that spiral. She might have dissolved into tears and quit on the spot. She would have gone home and rehashed that situation, how unfair it was, how undeserved it was. And instead, her therapist had taught her these words, and she went back in the next day, and here's what she said. Could you please help me understand? Could you please help me understand how I was up for promotion yesterday and I'm in danger of getting fired today? And her boss explained that a customer had really complained how rude she was. And Brittany remembered the situation. He had tried to return a mattress with the cover off, which is illegal. You cannot do that. And she had gently and politely enforced the policy, but he didn't get what he wanted, and he took his anger out by complaining about her. Once the supervisor found out what really had happened, Brittany got the promotion she deserved. Now, you talk about confusion and clarity. If we think that's so unfair, that's undeserved, and we just avoid it, or ignore it, it gets worse. If we ask, can you please help me understand, we can turn conflicts into clarifying conversations.
Yeah. It really is kind of like a magic wand because it shifts the energy. People all of a sudden they don't feel judged or like we're pointing a finger at them and blaming them. But there's like, they're curious about what is going on, and it allows us to get the truth of what is going on and to uncover any potential misunderstandings. And I think that people are good. I really do believe that. And I think that people really do the best that they can with the information that they have and the state that they're in, the resources they have. And so that clarity mindset, taking some time, right? Sometimes we need to take a breath before doing this, right? To use these linguistic tools that you're giving us today and ask questions and have more of those clarifying conversations. It can really shift, I think, the dynamic of the relationship. So it's not just resolving the immediate kind of issue of what's going on, but it can actually help us to come closer together, to soften some of the maybe underlying energies that were there even before, right? So it almost like elevates the relationship even more because there's more trust.
See, you have just expressed the river that runs through the work, right? Is how can we turn resentment into receptivity? How can we turn resistance into rapport and respect? And as you know, John Mackey, who's the founder of Whole Food and the founder of Conscious Capitalism, gave the cover endorsement to the book, and we had a conversation about it. And he said, well, Sam, I don't have time right now to read the whole thing. If you were just going to pull one idea from the book that you think can really make a difference in today's very rush kind of impatient world, what would that be? And I said, it's 3 letters, the word but. If we put the left-hand column, I hear what you're saying, but, you did a good job on that, but, well, I'd like to help you, but, I'm sorry that happened, but. That word but is at the core of our cancel culture. And you've asked several times how we can remember to do this. If as a result of our conversation, Vered, people just say, I'm going to get that, I'm going to, get that word but out of my vocabulary, and I'm going to replace it with and. I'm sorry that happened, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. And our accounting department is in charge of that. Let me put you in touch. It's I hear what you're saying, and we tried that before. And do you have any ideas on how it can go better next time? Do you hear how the word and acknowledges? The word but argues. The word and advances the conversation. The word but anchors it in an argument.
Absolutely. I think it brings us closer together. It allows us to, really validate and acknowledge how somebody's seeing the world. And then we can invite them to perceive something different or to consider another possibility. If we were to broaden that, right? When we think of dichotomies, right, or polarities, right? Like I have my opinion, somebody else has theirs, conflicting beliefs, just different points of view. We've come maybe from different types of environments, conditioned into different values and belief systems. And so when we are able to sincerely reflect back what we hear, what we sincerely agree with or respect or appreciate, and then, invite them to see our own, it's like rather than saying, I'm listening to yours, but then, turning away and saying that's not good or I don't believe that's true. We're saying, and right, there's both, we can hold both.
See, you just said it, is that the word but is an either or, right, wrong, up, down conversation. It makes the other person wrong and us right, which is why it perpetuates conflicts. And the beauty of the word and is that it puts us on the same side instead of side against side. And now there's another way to do that. Imagine we've got to tell someone no, we've got to reject a request. put over on the left the words, no, you can't because, or no, we can't because. Can we get this meeting started? Well, no, we can't because we don't have a quorum yet. Can I go ahead and talk with Ralph? And well, no, you can't. He's out sick today. It's like those words, you can't because, no, are like a verbal door slamming in someone's face. They will see us as blocking them from what it is they want. Now, I'll tell the story and we'll put what we can say instead that puts us on the same side, is that we were sharing this idea and a woman said, I can't wait to get home tonight. I love hearing that in these workshops. And I said, why? And she said, I'm a single mom. I've got 3 kids under the age of 10. It seems like all I ever do is tell them no. Can I play with my friends? No, you can't because you haven't done your chores. Can I watch TV? No, you can't because you haven't done your homework. And then we do what's called stacking. We often stack all these words to lose. How many times do I have to tell you? When are you going to start listening to me? And so she said, what can I say instead? I said, over on the right, put the words, yes, as soon as, or sure, right after. Yes, you can play with your friends as soon as you finish your chores. Take out the trash, pick up your room. You can go out and shoot hoops. Yes, you can watch TV as soon as you finish your math. Let me do your math. Let me have a look at it. And then you can do you see how she said, Sam, this isn't semantics. It changes the whole dynamic of the relationship when we focus on what we can do as soon as or right after instead of across the board no.
Very powerful, because it also presupposes like that we believe that they can do it, right? That they can finish their chores or do their homework or whatever that is. And I think that when people believe in us, we're much more likely to do it, to feel inspired to do it. Plus, we believe that it's possible for us to get what we want, right? And the more clear that we can be about that, what the expectations are, what the consequences are if they do or if they don't, again, it's that clarity mindset. Yeah.
And let's come back to clarity about what not to do when people complain. Guess what we don't do when people complain? Over on the left, put the word explain. Because if something goes wrong, we explain why it happened or why it didn't happen. And we think once the person understands why it happened, they'll forgive us. They actually get angrier because it feels we're not being accountable. So over on the right, put the A train. A for agree, A for apologize, A for act. And here's an example is once again, a gentleman in a session said, I wish I'd known this Friday. I said, what happened? He was going to pick his wife up after work. They're going to go out to dinner and a movie. Well, you know what happened? There was an accident on the freeway. It was gridlock. His phone battery had died. He had no way of letting her know what was going on. He said, by the time I got downtown, from a block away, I could see my wife on the curb pacing up and down. He said, I pulled up. She yanked that car door open. She said, you were supposed to be an hour ago. He said, don't blame me. I've been stuck in traffic all this time. She said, how was I supposed to know that? I didn't know if you had forgotten you were in some ditch somewhere. He said, get off my case. He said, it ruined our evening. He said, if I'd known this when I pulled up and she said, you were supposed to be here an hour ago, A for agree, I would have said, you're right. I was supposed to be here an hour ago. A for apologize. And I'm sorry you ended up waiting so long. A for act. And in the future, if I'm going to try and pick you up on a Friday, I'm building in a cushion for Murphy's Law. That is a conversation and a complaint resolved instead of perpetuated.
Wow. It's so beautiful and so simple. And I honor the fact that the apology part doesn't necessarily mean that we did something wrong. Like in this case, it was traffic. Yeah.
See, boy, I'm so glad you brought that up because someone in that workshop, he was not buying this. He said, why should he apologize? He didn't do anything wrong. And for many people, see, they are clear, like, not my fault. I'm not going to apologize, right? Well, you've heard the saying, we can be right or we can be happy. I think we can apologize, and it does not mean we're to blame. It means we're commiserating with the other person's inconvenience. Because if we put ourselves in their shoes and imagine what it was like for them, then our heart goes out and see we're apologizing that they've been waiting, not knowing what happened. We're apologizing that they didn't get their flowers in time for their birthday. We're apologizing, and we're not saying it's our fault. We are simply, as you've said, showing the empathy that puts us on the same side instead of side against side.
And this is why I love, these questions, like the one you said earlier, how would I feel? It's so powerful. And even like, how would I feel if, right, I said, right, how would the other person feel if I said this or that, right? We can prepare for these conversations in advance to kind of get a sense of like, maybe it's better to say this rather than that, or to use this tone or to, right, whatever that might be. Because the more that we can feel in advance, think in advance, connect with the other person, I think the more choices that we'll have available to us.
And in today's very divisive world, let's talk about choices, because so many people tell me, email me in sessions, that they're at loggerheads with a family member or a friend who has a different political opinion or a different opinion about vaccinations or about gender rights or whatever. And many people, they're not talking to their family anymore, or they quit this relationship. And if we are having divisiveness around something, in the middle, put the words quit the relationship. Because what I hear is a lot of people, they're just not going back to their home for family reunions or for holidays anymore. And I had an opportunity to experience this myself and come to clarity. The clarity mindset is that I've had a friend in the speaking industry for more than 20 years. She's just an icon. And we had monthly calls. And I was really surprised when a few years ago she said in the middle of a conversation, kind of casually, that she thought the president at the time was the best president we'd ever had. Well, I think just the opposite of that. And I couldn't believe that someone I knew so well and respected so much could have that belief. Well, at the end of the conversation, I didn't know if we were ever going to talk again. And it was really a crisis of conscience. And I'm so grateful. Two things happened that gave me clarity in that situation, Barrett. Is one, I watched CBS Sunday Morning, my favorite TV show, that Sunday. And they were interviewing Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And the reporter was kind of shocked. She said, "You go to see opera with Judge Scalia. What's that about? You're on the opposite ends of the political spectrum." And Ruth Bader Ginsburg said 6 words: "We are different. We are one." And when we quit a relationship, it's we are different, they are wrong. And as you say, we are different and we are one. And then I also thought of something. I grew up in a real small town in Southern California, more horses than people. My sister and I would be gone riding all day long, and now there was quicksand out there. And we would ride in these dry riverbeds, and it's easy to get into and hard to get out of. Well, you see the metaphor here, don't you, Baron? Is that did our parents forbid us from riding horses? You've got to quit riding horses because there's that quicksand out there? No, they told us to avoid the quicksand. And so my friend and I decided that politics was going to be a quicksand topic for us. And it became our code word, is that when we continued our conversations, because I got clarity, she's not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change her mind. We rather focus on what we have in common than what we have in conflict. We rather name this a quicksand topic than quit the relationship. And I hope that everyone listening and watching who's in that situation asks themselves, am I going to change their mind? Are they going to change mine? Is a conversation around this going to serve any good purpose? Or is it going to cause us to say things we can't take back? Would I rather agree to disagree about that and have a quicksand relationship than quit the relationship altogether and remember that we are different? We can still be one.
Truer words could not be said. right? And I think that our differences are really opportunities for us uh, to evolve, because it's a beautiful thing that we have different perceptions when we can focus on what we have in common, as you said, accept and respect our differences, and if we don't agree with them, right, but we can certainly respect.
Yes.
And when we do that, then we're able to learn from one another, maybe shift maybe any extreme perceptions that we may have, at least soften them a little bit. And I think that it's in the softening of any extreme beliefs or extreme behaviors that our world can shift, right? Just a little bit softer, a little more curiosity, a little bit more compassion. And for that, we need that clarity mindset, of clarity about what's most important. And clarity, thanks to you and others like you, about how to go about that, how to have those conversations. Because it's one thing to say, all right, what's most important is, let's say, the relationship. It's not the topic or us agreeing or, modifying each other's perspectives. How do we have that conversation? A good friend of mine is moving to Montana, and she's very concerned because her family members and her husband's family members have very different perceptions on things. I mean, it's almost to the point of a little bit of fear around that. There's a little bit of fear of them, trying to change her mind or trying to get her to do things, and because it's very extreme. So what can she do to create a safe, boundaried relationship when she moves out there?
I believe in rules. Vered, how is it that we can go out on a road and we can be traveling 65 miles an hour and another car is traveling 65 miles an hour and we pass within 10 feet of each other and we don't even flinch? How can a person walk across a busy road and not fear getting hit? It's because there are crosswalks and stop signs and lane markers, etc. And yet in most relationships, there are no rules. We can bring up something that happened 20 years ago that the person has apologized for, And so I believe if she's moving to Montana, it's important to gently and firmly establish and enforce rules, which is that I know that we have different beliefs about this, and I will honor your beliefs and thank you for honoring mine. And thank you for not trying to change my mind. And so if they start in is to literally and figuratively stand up for yourself. Because when we are seated and the other person is standing, that is the dominant submissive. That's often when people insult us, or that's often when they get intense in a way to dominate us. So if we can quietly and confidently, if someone starts in, we stand up, because what we're subliminally saying is, I'm not taking this sitting down. You see the change? Now we're leveling the playing field. We're seeing things eye to eye instead of this dynamic. And we use their names. It's grandma, grandpa. We had an agreement. Thank you for honoring it. And then we leave at that moment to give each other space. And then we come back when we think that they are ready to talk about something else, and we are ready to help out with the dishes, help set the table or something. So body language plays a role when it comes to establishing and enforcing rules, and to speaking up and standing up for what we stand for and what we won't stand for.
And how do we kind of keep people accountable to things? I know there's I mean, maybe if you're willing to kind of share what's in chapter 14 in the book, Talking on Eggshells, around accountability, and in this example, but all examples. I mean, I work with leaders, I train leaders, and oftentimes accountability is a big issue. How do we have those conversations?
Okay, I hope that everyone thinks of someone right now at work or at home who's breaking the rules, who, let's just use a very common example of someone who's coming in late all the time. And they always have an excuse. It was not them, it was traffic. It was like the doctor was running late. Daycare was the person didn't get there on, etc. So they always have a reason. Well, Aviation pioneer Chuck Yeager said, at the moment of truth, there are either reasons or results. So here are 6 things we can do when someone is breaking the rules and how to hold them accountable. Number 1, we ask ourselves, was this rule outlined at the outset? In other words, in the hiring interview, did we ever say to someone is that, and being on time is a rule of you continuing to be employed here. And on time, we don't mean, 9:10, getting a cup of coffee. We mean 9 o'clock at your desk, returning emails or taking calls. So ask ourselves, was it outlined at the outset? Number 2, has it been enforced consistently? Because Vera, what often happens is that sometimes you come in late, they say something, sometimes you come in late, nobody says anything. Or maybe Joe over there comes in late and nothing ever happens to him. And we start thinking, well, this isn't fair. Why am I coming in on time? So many times the rule has not been enforced consistently. Number 3, claim mea culpa. Mea culpa is Latin for my fault. Because see, if we didn't tell them about it in the beginning or we haven't enforced it consistently, we cannot try to hold them accountable now because they feel entitled. Well, this is so important. Why didn't you say something? It's like, well, this is so important. Why sometimes do it happen and nothing happens? So we have to claim mea culpa. And then the 4th step is things are going to be different from now on, starting as of this date. And we don't say, you better not be late again, because remember, we just used that bad word, which reinforces them being late, right? We say things are going to be different from now on, starting as of, and we build in a cushion, because maybe they really do have daycare issues that they need to logistically resolve. So we say starting as of, and it's usually a week to 2 weeks away so that they can get their ducks in a row and keep that commitment. Is that you will be expected, and it's got metrics to it, right? You better be on time. Nope, vague. You need to be on the property at your desk, returning emails or taking calls. Now, step 5, guess what? We do not say, do you understand? Because if they grumble or they go, yeah, that's not an agreement. We say, what is your understanding of our agreement? And Vera, they need to say it, or if this is an egregious case, they need to write it down. So we have a verbal and a written contract instead of, well, I asked them if they understood and they said they did. That's not a contract. And then step 6, schedule a follow-up. Because often these things go away. And sometimes people are counting on it. Yeah, we're upset now, but 2 weeks from now, they won't even remember this conversation. So we say, and we're scheduling a follow-up on such and such a date to make sure that you are abiding by the rules that you have agreed to.
So beautiful. So beautiful. And I think that this could be used with our children, with our partners, and oftentimes taking that ownership, right? Like, how clear were we? And was this, something that we were committed to in terms of kind of follow through and holding people accountable to. And I think that the pause there of kind of going inward before we immediately judge or take action or, is really critical. It's that choice point, because again, there's a little bit of empathy. Well, how would I feel if it wasn't clear, or if it wasn't, consistently, I forget what the word was, but consistently enforced. Thank you. Consistently enforced. How would I feel, right? I would probably feel like I'm, that it's not fair, that it's not just, that, and we may be losing somebody just because of that also, right? Somebody who could, or losing trust, right? With somebody that could be a very valuable, employee, or of course, a member of the family that we may lose trust with. Because they may say you don't get it, right? You don't even ask what's going on, if it is a daycare issue, whatever. And so I think that, again, this mindset of just kind of pausing to lean in rather than lean away or blame or get angry or whatever that is really just such a mind shift. And in a world where there is a lot of judgment and we ourselves feel judged, it's like many of us have been conditioned to do that. That's just the way it is. And um, so if there was a baby that was born today and you could give this beautiful soul some guidance as to how to not just like survive in this world, but to really like brighten up this beautiful world of us, what advice would that be?
What a wonderful question, Vered. Is it? I'm picking up on something you just said a moment ago. Of course, this is a mindset, and you said mind shift. Because look at the theme. What we're doing, we're shifting, right? We're shifting from reactive to proactive. We're shifting a conflict to cooperation. We're shifting contempt to compassion, etc. And so over on the left, if I were going to hopefully give this baby advice, over on the left is letting other people control our quality of life. And over on the right is understanding, having 100% clarity that we control our quality of life. And you think, yeah, that sounds kind of neck up, Sam, like a platitude. Like, here's how we give it teeth. And it's really one of my favorite stories to tell is that toward the end of a Talking on Eggshells or a Tung Fu workshop, I often put up a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said, "No one can make us feel inferior without our consent." And I cross out the words feel inferior and say, no one can make us angry without our consent. And there was a gruff construction boss in one of my programs, and he stood up and he said, "Sam, you're pulling a Pollyanna with this one." He said, "You have no idea the kind of people I work with. If someone's swearing at me, that's not supposed to make me angry." And a woman in the session stood up and she said, "I agree with that because I've lived through it." She said, "I'm a surgical nurse. I work with a neurosurgeon who's the most abrasive individual I have ever met. He's a brilliant physician. He has zip people skills." She said, "Last year, I was a fraction of a second late handing him an instrument in surgery. He berated me in front of my peers." She said, "It took all my professionalism just to continue with the operation and not walk out." She said, "When I was driving home, I was rehashing what he had said." She said, "I got more and more angry. I got home, I sat down at the dinner table. I told my husband what happened. I said, 'Oh, that doctor makes me mad.'" He'd heard this before. He said, "Judy, what time is it?" She said, "It's 7 o'clock." He said, "What time did this happen?" She said, 9 o'clock this morning." He said, "Judy, is it the doctor who's making you mad?" And with that, he got up and he left the dinner table. And she said, "I sat there and I thought about it and I realized it wasn't the doctor who was making me mad. The doctor wasn't even in the room. I was the one who'd set him a place at my dinner table. I was the one who'd given him a ride home in my car." She said, "I decided that evening that never again was that man welcome in my home or in my head, that I was going to leave him at the hospital and I was no longer giving him the power to poison my personal life." So my question is who do we set a place for at our table? Who do we give a ride to in our car? And can we get crystal clear that they cannot make us mad without our consent? They cannot make us miserable. We have the choice of what we focus on and what we give our attention to.
That's right. Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's an extraordinary story. And we decide what to focus on. And I think that thanks to a lot of your teachings, one of the things that we can consider in a situation like that is maybe we can also get curious and wonder, what made this surgeon, this person, this group of people behave the way that they do? And that doesn't mean we know the answer or that we're making excuses for them because the behavior is not okay. And it's just maybe a little bit of softness around that, curiosity.
It's interesting, Baird, because once again, it would be hubris to think that there's only one solution to any situation, only one way to respond, right? And I agree that there are a variety of ways to respond to that situation. And one is to, is to put ourselves in his shoes. There are a couple of others too, is I really believe in metrics. and to give these responses on the right teeth. What are the exact words? What can we do to hold someone accountable? What can we say so that it's not vague and wishy-washy, so that it really is actionable? And so I asked that surgical nurse, I said, so what did you do to not let that man poison your life? And she said, my husband and I declared a moan and groan moratorium. So when he came home from work, he had 15 minutes to talk about all the stuff that had gone wrong that day and all the injustices and so forth. I had 15 minutes to grouse and gripe. And then we put a sock in it because we realized there's so much more that we want to talk. We value the couple of hours we have at night before we go to bed, and we want to cherish that instead of poison that. And now there also is strength in numbers. And so she got documentable evidence of this was not a one-time incident. This neurosurgeon had been getting away with this behavior for years. So she got documented evidence with other members of different surgical teams of exactly what he had said when. And these days, hospitals and many organizations are very concerned about their Yelp reviews and their employee satisfaction. So when they presented this evidence to this HR, it was not, we don't like this anymore. It's like, we thought it was important for you to know about this individual's egregious behavior and how it is causing a revolving door and it is affecting employees and patients so that they are equipped to take action on it instead of us feeling helpless and hopeless in that situation.
Again, that advice to that baby, right?
Gonna be one wise baby, isn't it?
Well, you are a very wise, beautiful soul, Sam. And I know you know, and I'll say it again, that I love you and that I respect you and that I am deeply grateful for you giving us the how, right? Many of us have heard these kinds of things, but we don't exactly know how. Like, tell me what to say, what to do, what not to do. And you've made that so clear for us that now at this point, it's our choice. So I invite everyone listening to grab this book and your other books. And you have really specified for us, just like as you have, in our conversation today, examples after examples of how to utilize these tools. And for that, I'm thankful.
Well, thank you. It's Vered, you and I both agree with Catherine Graham of the Washington Post, who said, to do what you love and feel that it matters, how could anything be more fun? The only thing more fun is to do what we love and feel it matters and get to do it with people we enjoy and respect. And that's how I feel about you in this opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sam. And how can people learn more about your incredible keynotes and programs and books and articles? You have such a wealth of resources out there. Where do we go?
Well, thank you. It's real easy. Just go to samhorn.com, SAMHORN. My TEDx talks are there, blogs are there, consulting, speaking services. And I also hope that people check in with me on LinkedIn. It's my life is my lab. And if I'm out on that stream trail and something occurs to me, or I'm working with a client or an audience member brings up something, I love to sit down and riff off it and write about it and share it. So hopefully we'll connect on LinkedIn as well.
Beautiful. Thank you again, Sam.
You're welcome.